Yes, it's that time again. Time for another SEO-to-Go special here on Inside Marketing with me, Mike Green. So, what are you waiting for? If you love SEO, you're going to love this. So, let's jump right in. You know, I don't know how many times I've heard the phrase SEO is dead over the years, but I can tell you it's a lot. But there again, from the beginning of the industry, I never felt that the term search engine optimization was really appropriate for what the discipline is all about. And yes, I've said many times before, I started my first internet marketing agency 30 years ago this year. And you know, in all that time, I've never met anyone who calls themselves an SEO who has actually optimized a search engine. So SEO may not be dead, but maybe what it's called should be. Sweeping advances in AI and machine learning are changing once again what the role of the so-called SEO is. And in certain sectors, it causes somewhat more complex issues than just, Google changed its algorithm, now I'm going to get less traffic. One such area, which is somewhat different to other verticals, is online publishing, perhaps more so news publishing. And if you just raised an eyebrow there when you heard me say the words news publishing, well, you're in for a treat. I want you to meet 4 experts in the field of SEO and news publishing. So let's meet my guests. And here we are again for another edition of SEO-to-Go, my special on the Inside Marketing series. I am absolutely blessed with all of the shows we've done so far because I end up with a superstar panel, and today is no different. Today I have 4 superstars, mega brains from the world of SEO and publishing. So thank you to everybody for joining. As I always do, being an American citizen but a British gentleman, I think we'll start with ladies first, and we'll go over to Maddie. Maddie, thank you so much for joining.
Hey, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So, you are an audience growth expert. You're the director of SEO with CBS News, which is part of Paramount. You also worked for the New York Post as well. So you have a very distinguished career in publishing and SEO. Was that intentional?
Um, I started my career wanting to be a writer, but then found that SEO was a nice combination of using my using both sides of my brain, so working with numbers and words at the same time. I kind of fell into news SEO and publishing SEO, and got addicted to the adrenaline rush that often comes with covering the news. So I definitely not intentional, but very much. I didn't get into it intentionally necessarily, but very much stayed here
You obviously
intentionally.
enjoy it because you're still there doing it.
Yes, exactly. It's no easy feat, I would say. So you're not here if you don't enjoy it.
And we have a very strong connection between us in that your boss is Rachel Heseltine. And Rachel and I have known each other, oh, I think 20 years at least, maybe.
Yes, yeah, I'm very lucky to work with Rachel. She's awesome, and she introduced me to you, which is great.
Yeah, there you go. So those are the things that we do know about you. Here's a question I love to ask. What do we not know about you that we can't find on social media?
Well, I was very intentional about wearing some of the jewelry that I make. It's one of my favorite pastimes, and um, I just like it's a very nice, like tactile hobby, but you get it's like you have these short-term projects that you get to like deliver a concrete product from, and then you get to make stuff for yourself and then for others for gifts. And yeah, it's one of my favorite hobbies. Not that many
Wow.
people know about it.
So that means you'll be making me a diamond bracelet for Christmas, yes?
Surely, yeah. Send me your wrist measurement, and I'll get that going.
We're going to scoot across the ocean to Brighton. I know you said London there, but actually to Brighton, where Brighton actually is the home of Brighton SEO and also the home of the very famous John Barnes. John, great to see you. It's been some time.
It has.
Yeah. So John and I used to work together for Incisive Media, and Incisive Media owned Search Engine Watch, clickz.com, and the SES conference and expo back in the day. And John's career in publishing, he's been involved in it for a very long time, but obviously spent a lot of his time for a period because he was involved in that whole conference and the SEO publishing side as well. But you're now Chief Digital Officer with William Reed, which
Yep.
is a large publishing company in the UK. Indeed, an award-winning publisher. And like I say, you and I worked together for Incisive Media. So you were jetting backwards and forwards between London and Hong Kong and New York. Those were the
Yeah,
days, John.
they were the days.
So that's the stuff that we can find out about you anywhere in social media. But tell us something about you, John, that we don't know.
Well, my pseudonym is Vincent Van Cloth, and I make things out of cloth by sewing them together. And I've been reasonably successful at it, and I have a following. And I sell what I would call classic album covers reimagined in cloth. So it's right up your street, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, you've always had that kind of artistic streak because even when we worked together, you were always doing these paintings and you were using digital to create these paintings back in the day.
Yeah, I did a lot of iPad art in the day. And so I've got quite a lot of drawings from the time we had together at SES, Marriott Hotel lifts and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah. So what I want to see you to do for my Christmas gift from you in cloth, I want the Sergeant Pepper's cover. See how you do that?
that's a bit tough. I could reimagine that. I'll tell you what, I'll have a think about your Geordie roots and I'll think of something for you.
Anyway, great to have you. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
The conversation. The second John is John Shihata, another guy in the industry who's been around for so long that you could say he needs no introduction, but he's getting one anyway. John, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're very busy, but this is great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So you are the founder of and CEO of NewsDash, which is a company that you founded. But prior to that, you were the global VP of audience growth for Condé Nast, which is one of the world's largest publishing companies, I think, yeah?
Yes, it's one of the biggest ones.
And they were in the One World Tower in New York City. But again, you have a history. If I go back and take a look at what you've been doing in your career, you've been connected to news organizations for quite some time, yeah?
Yeah. Can you still hear me?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, good. Yes.
You sound
Yeah,
fine.
I have been doing news SEO for almost like 23 years, 24 years. So I started at local first, was advanced digital for about 6, 7 years, moved to Disney, where I did like ABC News, ESPN, even Oscars and so on. And then I moved to Condé Nast, where I started was national, and then I moved to international brands as well.
Fabulous. And you and I have known each other for a very long time as well.
Since the SES days.
John and I once attended an event by SEMrush in Portugal, in Lisbon, and managed to go to the same airport, travel on the same plane, go to the same hotel
Yes.
without knowing it.
Yes.
I didn't actually bump into him until we got into the lobby of the hotel and realized we'd been sitting for 9 hours or something on the same plane.
Yeah. But I know you since SES. Like, do you remember SES, like back in New York, 4 floors at Marriott Marquis and, 4,000 people attending. So I think I know you since then.
Yeah, way back in the day. And it's so funny. I was talking to somebody just last night, without going too far off at a tangent. I was at an industry event last night and people were talking about conferences. And somebody said to me, Oh, I went to, I'm not going to name the conference, and they said it was huge. They had nearly 300 people there. I said, really? SES used to have 6,000 people back in the day. 1,000 of them were homeless people from New York just getting out of the rain, but the rest of them were definitely the real thing. Anyway, great to have you along, John. Good to see you.
Thanks for having
And
me.
at the very last minute, joining us because Danny Goodwin was going to join us, but he had to pull out. And the ever faithful and ever, we can depend on Barry Schwartz, another person who needs no introduction. But Barry, you're getting one. Thank you so much for jumping in at the last minute. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
So you are the CEO and the founder of a company called Rusty Brick, which I think is a development company.
Yeah, we build web and mobile software, anything custom, unique, anything outside of SEO. Like if you need something to manage anything in your business, we build it from scratch.
There you go. Nice plug for the company. Something I've always wanted to ask you, I don't know if I ever did, because you and I, again, have known each other for 20 years or more. I've never seen a Rusty Brick. Why did you call your company Rusty Brick?
My brother, I have a twin brother, which is maybe some of you didn't know, maybe answers your first question, your last question you're going to ask me. But, and when we were 14 in high school, he loved building stuff on his computer, and he named the company after his kind of his initials, Rusty Brick Software. We removed the software component, and it's just Rusty Brick because it's just cute internet name. Bricks don't rust, so I don't know. It was just something we just came up with.
Well, it's one of those very memorable ones. And you're now news editor with Search Engine Land. And you write probably about 1 million articles every year.
Yeah, I post about 6 a day on Search Engine Roundtable, 2 a day on Search Engine Land.
Wow.
What they call a content spammer.
Before there was AI to do it, Barry Schwartz did it
by hand.
And so do you actually know how many articles do you publish every year? Actually, in total, how many? Do you know?
Over 40,000 in total.
Wow, 40,000.
I don't call them articles; they're little short blurbs, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs.
Ranks #1 at Google for news spamming.
Yes.
Anyway, that's great. Thank you, Barry, for joining us. Great to have you along. Subject matter here, as we start the conversation, is all to do with publishing. Many people that I've talked to recently talked about changes that are taking place at Google, like zero click and not enough traffic coming and those kind of things. It seems that whatever Google does, any changes, well, all search engines, I guess, that any changes they make seems to affect publishers, or they seem to get more annoyed about it than anyone else. John, I'll come to you first. Sorry, two Johns. John S. You'll be for this one, okay? John S., you've been in the industry for so long, and you are renowned for being an expert in this particular field. We're going to drill down, but give us a high level. Why is publishing somewhat different in the world of SEO than other verticals?
Oh, absolutely. I think the traditional SEO applies to news SEO. I like to call it news SEO, but was a little bit more into it, right? So like speed is a huge factor when it comes to news SEO, right? And I think this is one of the things that made me love news SEO more than SEO, because news SEO felt it's a hybrid place between SEO and PPC, right? With PPC, you do a campaign, you see results right away. With traditional SEO, you have to wait a few months. I didn't like PPC, and news SEO was like, it has that feeling. You do SEO and you see results in a few minutes or less than an hour kind of thing. So speed, definitely, right? Who breaks the story, who covers the story, who has the best angle, who has the local angle, who has different angles of the story. So speed is huge, right? Content volume and frequency also plays a big role here, because if you think about topic authority, or as Google call it, news topic authority, right? Who is covering that specific topic more than anyone else, or best or better than anyone else, and so on. So there is a news topic authority that plays into the equation. So when we talk about SEO, right? Barry Schwartz, probably SEO news, not news SEO, right? You will have Barry's content coming because he has so much coverage in depth about all the different topics that are about SEO in general, right? So content volume and frequency plays another factor here. Also, as you mentioned, Mike, the SERP features and layout plays a big role in publishers or news SEO, right? So you will see Google identify certain queries as trends or news queries, which makes the whole SERPs change. Query deserves freshness, right? A part of it, right? So you will see the news box or top stories, as Google call it, will jump all the way in the top. So your regular organic results does not send you as much traffic. It's really the holy grail for news publishers is that news box or the top story. So that sends a lot of traffic, as well as additional feature or new features like Google Discover. Google Discover now is the number one traffic source for news publishers, right? Now, all the social media traffic that used to drive a ton of traffic to publishers pre 2018, right? That Facebook at a certain point of time surpassed Google. I remember those days, right? And then Facebook changed their algorithm, family and friends in 2018. Twitter now is like, not sending much traffic. So now you see Google Discover sending the majority of traffic to news publishers, followed by Google Search, followed by social networks, and then followed by Google News, which is news.google.com. So a lot of publishers are dependent on Google, and that's why publishers are the most vocal or the most impacted when Google changes anything around their SERPs. So there is so many different factors, but this is some of the stuff that I think makes a huge difference for news publishers as a top level, high level.
Yeah, excellent overview, Joe. Why is Discover, has it become so important? I remember when it was launched, everybody was like, whatever. And now, like you say, it's become such a big deal.
I started working on Discover when Google first actually launched it was whitelisted publishers. Back then, it was by RSS feed. So I got Condé Nast some of the brands to be in Google Discover by providing RSS feeds to Google Discover. Uh, Google Discover, I think it's Google answer to social platforms in a way. Do you remember Google had so many different attempts at social, and most of them, if not all of them, like failed miserably. But this one, just Google, I think, found the sweet spot, knowing all the search history, the location, and they were able to personalize content to users without doing any search. And they are utilizing their homepage. Remember, homepage to Google is the most important asset. I think they have only a team dedicated for homepages, and any small tweak on that homepage like requires so many approvals. That's my understanding. Now Discover lives on the homepage. So, and especially if you're in a country where Android is the dominant cell phone or mobile phone, you will find Google Discover so huge because it's becoming a default behavior of Android. I think once you open your Android, you turn right or left, you will find all the Discover feed. So it's right there in front of you. You're not searching, right? So that caused a ton of traffic. Suddenly, overnight, publishers start having so much traffic day after day to the point that actually Discover is sending them, for some publishers, 60, 70. I saw some publishers a few weeks ago getting 90% of their traffic from Google Discover. Now, this is a double-edged kind of a thing, right? Because while everyone is enjoying all the traffic, we saw so many horror stories overnight for no specific reason. Publishers lose all that traffic. So when you build all your predictions and commercial prediction for next year and how much money you're going to make and all that stuff, and you lose 90% of your traffic overnight and you don't know exactly how to get it back, that can be devastated for so many different publishers.
Absolutely. And on that subject, you just touched on the commercial side. That's one of the main reasons, John B., that I wanted to have you here. By the way, John B., I didn't mention this before in the introduction, but the number of people, because you had a company called Sloop.
Sloop
The
Media,
number of
that's right.
people, yeah, it just occurred to me, the number of people who said to me, what's to do with the Sloop? I think, oh, you're obviously not a Beach Boys fan, are you?
Exactly.
Sloop John B. So, John B., given what the fabulous overview and answer, especially with Discover, that John S. has just given us, when you think about it as the publishing company, with a lot of companies, they have this that are not publishing companies. They have this, SEO. I don't know why people talk about that. It's just traffic that Google sends us for free, that kind of thing. But it's hugely important to the bottom line. So From a publisher's point of view, how important is SEO and SEO traffic to you?
Well, we've got a reasonably large SEO team for a company of our size, and we consider it to be very important because whilst we're not totally obsessed by just raw traffic numbers, we have deep and narrow brands. Things like the grocer. We have lots of publications in the restaurant trade, in the pub trade, and also specialist brands that look at things like nutri-ingredients, things like gut health and sports nutrition and things like that. So people finding and discovering our brands, SEO is really, really important for that. And it's still across our business, the number one traffic driver. It's still about 58% of the traffic. But as I said earlier, we're not obsessed just by the volume of the traffic. We really want to try and filter out the people in market. So it's a sort of double-edged sword in a way. So if you take something like the COVID pandemic, we would see a lot of traffic coming on stories about vitamin D and mushrooms because we were writing about that. But a lot of those users, maybe 50, 60% of them were just consumers that were worried about trying to avoid COVID and wanted to eat more mushrooms. So as a result of that, we're trying to convert that traffic into registered users and then ultimately subscribers so that we can really then just see what our actual market is. On the counter side, though, because we have brands that are well established and well known, even though they're B2B brands like the grocer, we have a lot of awards and accreditations for different brands. And so somebody like Marks and Spencer's, for example, would be very happy to put the grocer supermarket of the year logo on all their shopping bags. And actually, that's quite important that consumers know who we are as well, because it basically strengthens that B2B relationship with those companies like Marks and Spencer's and Co.
So I understand, having been part of the publishing industry myself with Search Engine Watch ClickZ back in the day, the importance of getting subscribers, and you've just mentioned that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you do need eyeballs because you sell advertising.
Exactly. And, advertising is important, and particularly increasingly because of things to do with, data changes and GDPR and all those issues. It's really important that we're sort of have got a very strong contextual advertising place. We're putting the context around the article, not necessarily targeting the user. But what's sort of different about our model is that we sell tenancy. We're not selling raw CPM. And as a result of that, we're sort of able to ride a bit fluctuations in traffic from search engines, but not live without it. We do need it. And obviously, what we're concerned about at the moment is the various changes to do with things like Google Answers and things like that, where people are asking the search engine questions rather than coming to our sites to find answers. So, as a result of that, that's something we're really sort of focusing in on, and we're building our own kind of Ask products on our sites so that when people do come to us, we can try and encourage them to stay with us and explore our deep and narrow LLM, which is about the product, the brand, the market, rather than a wider LLM that's looking across the whole industry, across everything. And we think that the kind of advantage there is to use SEO to pull traffic in to then try and keep them on our sites for longer by providing that kind of AI experience.
So yeah, we're going to talk a lot more about AI and machine learning and LLMs in a moment. But I just learned something there, that people thought eating mushrooms during COVID would help them.
Yeah, there you go. It's got vitamin D in it. It's good, apparently.
Well, I'll remember that with the next pandemic. Not that I'm hoping
Yeah.
for one. Maddie, coming to you again, because you work with, we're talking about publishers, so we're mainly talking about, John talked about publishing magazines and things like that. But you're on the publishing side, but it's actually chasing the TV headlines. So tell me a little bit about how it works with you, because TV news just moves like that. And as John S. has already said, for a while with SEO, you created content and waited 3 weeks to see it. Your news is about as stale as it could get. So tell me a little bit about operationally, how does it work between what's happening on TV and then what do you have to publish on the website?
Yeah, like John mentioned, it is incredibly fast paced, and that's part of the reason why I enjoy it so much. You get that immediate feedback that you don't get with traditional SEO. I would say on the TV side, it's differentiated because we are really video heavy. We rely quite a bit on those clips and the footage that users also see on TV. Uh, I would say one of the harder, that we benefit quite a bit from the original reporting that we get from our broadcast teams. One of the harder parts, though, is just the sheer quantity of people who are publishing to our site, because there are so many people who contribute to broadcast coverage, but then also across the country we have many different newsrooms who are publishing straight to the same domain. And essentially it's just making sure that we're all working in lockstep, even if we have different primary goals. And that's been a big part of my job, just making sure that everybody's aligned and understands what the best practices are, and then ultimately follows those best practices. I would also say that one thing we tend to struggle with is just we're CBS News and we have really high standards, which is the most important thing. That's the long term, how you earn audiences and earn audiences trust. But we also, because of that, tend to take longer to break news. And I think we all know what Google is more equipped to understand: first publish or most trustworthy. And I think first publish is probably the it's very concrete. It's the thing that Google can understand better than like how vetted is this article, how many sources are going into this article. So that's one thing that we really, it can be an obstacle to search performance, but ultimately in the long term, it's the most important thing.
So
So
John
just
B
balancing
talked a
that.
little bit about, sorry for interrupting you there, Paddy, but John B talked a little bit about, looking at both sides, driving traffic and bringing in subscribers, which is really important. What is it that you actually want with users? Are you just looking for eyeballs? Is it about the whole notion that SEO is just about driving traffic, or is there a relationship that you want to kind of evolve into with your visitors?
Yeah, that's it's been an interesting thing since AI overviews came out. There's been discussion around like, oh, we're still getting higher quality traffic even if the overall traffic numbers are lower. For us, traffic is traffic. We want people to watch videos, to see display ads, but ultimately, like, there's not that much of a stratification between X type of reader and Y type of reader. So that's when you asked John earlier, like, why do search features like that hit publishers particularly hard? From my perspective, that is one of the biggest parts. It's the funnel is a lot shorter in certain ways.
So, Barry, you are the news editor over at Search Engine Land, but you're a major contributor. We've already talked about the amount of content that you create, but at the same time, reporting. I can tell every time there is a change, every time there is an update at Google, you are reporting on all of the sites that are losing traffic, and quite a lot of those are on the publisher's side. I guess you're monitoring that yourself for the Search Engine Land content.
Yeah, I mean, the publishers, it depends. So like the most vocal people when it comes to traffic losses are those that are the most vocal people, which are publishers. They're just always talking. So that's generally it. So you hear about that a lot, especially with the last September 2023 helpful content update and the previous core updates. You heard from them. A lot of them were the smaller publishers. Some of the bigger publishers don't really like to talk much, although some have released reports. Like even the big education technology company Chegg is suing Google over AI overview, saying they're not sending traffic and they're hurting the economy and the ecosystem. So we've seen a lot of that, and I think it just makes sense that the ones that are most vocal are the most vocal about getting hit by Google. But you see it all the time. I'm deep in the weeds in the SEO community. I'm deep in the weeds of small site owners and their businesses, even since the early days in the Florida update in 2003, that literally go out of business. After Google produces a new algorithm update. It could be search features, like you said, like the answers, the AI overviews. I know it goes back to, remember like in early like 2004 when Google came out with like dictionary answers, and like the dictionary sites were like, oh, it's no fair. Google's taking all our traffic, and a lot of them went out of business. And then Universal Search launched, and then there were videos and local panels and all these other things left in the system in the search results. It wasn't just 10 blue links. And everyone's like, oh, I hate it. I don't want it. I got into Brian Williams before his scandal. I went to the studio there and I spoke to him about universal search and how it's going to kill the whole entire ecosystem. And then we had knowledge panels, I think, come out in like May 2012, I think, which again, everyone's like, oh, it's not fair. Google's giving people answers and they're not going to our website. Then we had the featured snippets. And then, Singal said, no, it's not a problem. From Google, he's like, it's the Swiss Army knife. If people want more information, they'll click through and they'll get to the information from the publisher's website. And then we had all these like hidden gems with social media stuff, Reddit results coming up all over the place. And now we have these AI overviews, which really give you everything you need to know. It might be false, it might be made up, but people don't care. They like to hear what they like to hear, and they don't like to validate anything. So we're living in this world now where we're in this constant cycle of Google's releasing features. It's hurting us. Ultimately, we have to play in their space. And ultimately, I think we're in this new space now where Google has these AI overviews, and like everybody's been saying, we're not measuring traffic as much because it's more about the brand. We have to make sure that people respect the brand. They know they could trust us. They know that if they need an answer from something, they know who to go to in the field. And that's going to be harder and harder as time goes on. I don't see why a AI engine or AI bot can't do exactly what I do in terms of writing content. John Mueller said this, Danny Sullivan said that. Google released this update based on volatility trackers. I don't see why they can't do that, to be honest. I know there's people say, oh, they can't compete, but ultimately I think they can. And I think, you have to keep improving your brands to survive. And the best thing about this is most of us have been around for a while. We've survived, the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, the 2010s, the pandas, the penguins, the feature snippets, the knowledge panels, and now we're in the AI overview phase, and hopefully we'll survive that. But AI is not just taking over Google; it's taking over plenty of jobs, and everybody's scared out of their wits about this. So it's a good time, exciting. I love this. I love this time because as all these new publishers, all this change, we love change, and we love reporting about it, and we love covering it, and we love watching everybody's reactions to it.
It was an excellent summary of everything you've written about over the past 20 years. but it is true that people do kind of overreact sometimes. I want to turn towards content in just a second. But it always makes me think, and this turned up in a recent show that I did as well, with some other SEOs, and it is kind of fundamentally, I must have missed the memo or the contract or the agreement that Google sent to everybody saying, if you have a website, I will send you free customers. I mean, there is no such thing. It's nice if you do receive some traffic from Google, but to expect the traffic, and then if they change their model and change something there, and then you get so upset about that, and then what they're actually doing is just for the benefit of the end user because it's obviously better for the end user. I think it is unusual in that there is so much reliance on on SEO to send you free traffic. Anyway, we'll leave that one there for another time. I'm going to come back to John S. Barry just mentioned something there as well that seems to have been so confusing for so many people, and I kind of understand why, because I've been writing about this stuff for a long time, particularly from an information retrieval point of view. And then Google rolled out this thing that they call the helpful content update. And I have seen so many people asking, even people from Google, what do you mean by the helpful content update? What is it? And I've never heard a straight answer. I mean, to you, what is the helpful content update? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's so true, right? It's like there's so many mysteries around it, not just among the SEO community, but I would say around Google, some of the Google engineers as well, and even Google came with a certain definition, changed definition over time, first party, third party, especially with affiliate content and so on. So there are so many things to be said around that. The way I look at it is like, yes, it's important to understand all these different like algorithm updates and changes and so on, but the basic principles apply all the time, right? You're writing quality content, that benefits the users, right? And it's in depth, right? So it provides them with like additional value based on everything else around the web. And I think these basic principles will apply all the time. Now, at a certain point of time, I'm not saying like big publishers, but big publishers and small start trying to increase revenue by getting into a lot of other content verticals that may or may not apply to them, right? Why a news publisher they're writing about business will be writing about, I don't know, home and garden or killing cockroaches and stuff like this, right? So, and it was, it's, I'm not saying every news publisher is the same, but there was an opportunity, right? And some can justify, you know what, we have been doing coupons forever. Before Google even existed, we had it in our newspapers, right? Why can't we have coupons? So there's many arguments to many sides to that argument. I think, especially with AI content, right, is like I heard somewhere that every day there's 7 million pieces of new content that is pushed online, right? AI has been crazy, and Barry can fact check me on that. This is something I heard recently, but there's so much content being published now. And either it's all the same, right? Because AI is writing it based on whatever is available right there. There's no any added value to it, right? Or it's not in depth and so on. So Google is taking steps to say, you know what, we want to serve you the best quality content out there. And sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't get it, sometimes they hallucinate. So it's just a cat and a mouse game since ever, since we started this whole business, right? People try to spam the system and take advantage to drive traffic, drive business, drive revenue, and Google is trying to overcome these spammers or overcome like any kind of like shortcomings in their code and algorithm. So that's the nature of the game, right? And sometimes Google get it right, sometimes they don't get it right, you know.
Mm-hmm. Maddie, here's a thing, a conversation that I had recently about AI generated content. The fact that it's there, that people want to use it, but what they don't seem to fully understand, and I was actually talking to somebody at Google about this, is that Google obviously uses machine learning a lot more now in terms of managing the crawl. Okay, crawl data, it's a huge task. And previously Google had to crawl every single page over and over again. Even if you just changed a period or a comma, they have to go back to that page. So the overhead is absolutely huge. So, I mean, one way that you can get around that is with structured data. We'll come back to that. But one of the things that I discovered with Google using machine learning is that they fully understand um, the temporal analysis of how much content is created by a certain website or within certain categories, yes? And then you have all of these categories where their natural output is like one blog post a week. This is not publishers, okay? And then all of a sudden with AI, they're now publishing 100 blog posts a week. And it is so obvious sending a signal to Google that this may or may not be great content. So let's just talk about that, the balance that you have there. I mean, you have journalists, you have news, you have plenty of content coming in. But are you using AI to create content? And has the amount of content that you create moved up?
Yeah, no, we don't use AI at all, and it's very there have been lots of memos about not doing that across the newsroom. I would say, similar to what John has said before about the helpful content update, I would say it seemed pretty strategic to me that Google rolled out helpful content updates relatively, right before it started using AI. Um, to me, the helpful content update was kind of Google saying, please don't waste our time. Don't have us crawl XYZ amount of pages for no new information at all. I also think it was Google saying, hey, we're going to start really prioritizing showing net new information or pages that have net new information in order to incentivize creating additional information on the internet that it can crawl and give AI answers as a result from.
So here's an analogy that I use because I've been
Yeah.
studying information retrieval for more than 20 years. I'm a member of
Hmm.
ACM, which is the world's largest computing society. And inside that, I'm a senior member of the special interest group for information retrieval, which is a subset of artificial intelligence. And I'm looking at information retrieval on the web, and we've been using AI in information retrieval for a very long time. Google's been using AI since it started, right at the
Hmm.
very beginning. And one of the terms that we use or words that we use over and over again is relevancy.
Hmm.
Relevancy, the content, it was all about relevancy. But the helpful content update is more than just relevant. And I wrote this a long, long time ago. If somebody did the search, for instance, for the BBC in the UK, yeah, and they get five, listings that are all about the history of the BBC, and no, I just want to know what's on TV tonight,
Hmm.
yeah. It may be relevant, but it's not useful. So the whole
Hmm.
point is that if you're creating relevant content, it has to be relevant but useful in the moment. So do you actually fully understand the intent so that I can see this and get an answer to solve the problem in seconds? And that's, of course, why the zero-click thing is important, because there are so many things that people want information where they don't want to click a link and
Yeah.
go through to another website and have to sign up a form and dodge 19 ads and those kind of things,
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I've been ever since we got those internal documents from the antitrust suit that about how Google, basically confirming what most of us have known for quite some time, that Google uses user interactions to determine future rankings and so on and so forth, which you have been writing, Mike, about for 20 plus years, it seems like. I've been interested in how dwell time, while it might indicate you know quality content, longer dwell time, a shorter dwell time might also indicate a more helpful post as well. So if somebody can get their answer quickly and move on, then perhaps that's a helpful content, even if it's a quick dwell time. And I've been interested in how that might change Google's algorithm as a result. But yeah, I loved those documents and seeing just like something that we all knew but have been told was not the case, is actually true. And
Well, some of that
yeah,
wasn't interpreted correctly. 23 years
yeah,
ago, I wrote about why
hmm,
audience looking at the feedback loop,
yeah,
why it was very, very important. And I think what happened in the industry is a lot of people started saying, oh, it's all about clicks. And you said we
oh
didn't
yeah,
count clicks. Okay, that was never the case. It's not about clicks. We've got fat thumbs. We
hmm,
click on things on our phones all of the time that we didn't intend to do. That's really noisy. But if you use AI, if you use machine learning, which Google has been doing, there is a pattern, and it's about patterns of access, and that's how they judge what the end user is liking. So it's
hmm,
not about the click, it's about the pattern of access. And machine learning is all about identifying patterns. I want to switch the conversation back to something I completely missed before, because I talked to John S. about that, about just expecting traffic. John B., back to you as a publisher. How do you look at the bottom line and say, as John S. was talking about before, how do we determine what the return on SEO is going to be? How do we determine how it affects the bottom line?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer to that is, volume of pages that are generated as a result of that, and how we're able to monetize them in the first instance through advertising. That's the basic kind of metric I guess most people would use. And that's where, the thing you've just been discussing about helpful content updates and things like that, that's why it caused so much of a fuss, I think, because there was a very real drop for certain publishers, particularly publishers that were, monetizing primarily through advertising, that created a big stir. And that's why it made so much fuss. And I'm sure Barry wrote about that a lot at the time. But what we are also interested in is how we can actually convert those users, as I said earlier. So we're very interested in this metric from unknown to known, and we've started using other kind of KPIs rather than just story volume or the number of clicks coming through from Google. As you say, we're interested in clicks to conversions. And so people that actually have come from Google and then we're able to actually convert into a registered user so that we can actually start to interact with them through other revenue models like email or lead gen, or invite them to events like this to interact with other users. So that's one of the ways we measure it. And then the other thing that we're very interested in at the moment is there's a kind of a group in the UK that's a spin-off from the FT called FT Strategies, and they kind of provide consultancy work to publishers, and they've just come up with this concept which is quite interesting called GPA, or Global Paying Audience. And we started to adopt that to say, okay, well, of these people that are coming in from Google, how many of those kind of match that global paying audience kind of metric? So they're going to basically pay for something, whether that's paying for pay to view, or whether it's paying for a subscription, or buying things, through referral traffic. And that's one of the ways that we're now starting to say, okay, well, investment in SEO is basically going to give this kind of return, and we're trying to monitor that more effectively, particularly when you think in the old days when we were doing SES, Google's crawls to referrals or calls to clicks might be 2, 3, 4 crawls to one click. Something like ChatGPT is more like 155, 200 crawls to a click. And we're more concerned about things like Perplexity and those kind of products where they don't really care too much about things like robots.txt. I mean, our robots.txt file is almost like a do not trespass sign that's been driven over by a truck, in terms of the way those guys are kind of coming in and just taking our content. And so that's why it's very important for us to sort of understand the differences between what I'd call search traffic and then what we're seeing as this kind of Wild West traffic from Perplexity and other sites, so that we can try and filter it out and classify it a bit better to understand how it's valuable to us.
Yeah.
Mike, can I add something? Can I add something a little bit on the revenue side? Because something I have been like very close to heart when I was in Condé Nast for the last 7 years. I think there's two types of publishers, right? Publishers that who can have the chance to charge users for their content, right? Their content is so valuable, users cannot find it anywhere else. It's in depth, it's niche specific, right? So this is one bucket. The other publishers, their content, it's not like good or quality, but their content is available uh, in from so many other providers, right? Let's talk about celebrities content or entertainment content, right? They will never be able to charge for that specific content because there's 1,000 other publishers writing the same kind of content, and the users are not expecting ever to pay for that content. You know what? You don't give me, I don't know, Kim Kardashian stories today. From here, I'm gonna find it somewhere else, right? So these are the two buckets. That's to start with. The publishers who can charge for their content, one of the biggest mistakes they do is they try to convert users from visitors to paid subscribers immediately, and that's why there's a lot of friction. So usually you need to make it in multiple steps, right? Let's convert them to like newsletter subscribers, okay? Because we know newsletter subscribers are more likely to pay for a product than just a regular user coming in, right? So having registration walls, working on your first party data, first like third party data is going away from unknown to known, all of these kind of things. And this is the beauty about also Google Discover, because a part of the Google Discover algorithm is Google is sending you repeat users. Now, you cannot measure it in Google Analytics because Google Analytics only identify maybe 3-4% of Google Discover, and the rest they put them all in one bucket, like as direct traffic. So it's hard to put any numbers around it. But in my opinion, I think part of the Google Discover algorithm is like, oh, this user likes your content. That's a signal, right? Or follows your content, or keep reading your content. I will send more and more of that user back to your site, and it's highly personalized, so they send it to them. So this is one aspect of like converting users to email subscribers and email subscribers to paid subscribers. The other thing also is like, I think publishers have to unite together and create a system where they charge LLMs for information. They have to do that, right? Because now LLMs get content from publishers, right? It could be a token system or so on. I think German publishers are talking about doing something like this. So every time you retrieve And now LLMs can retrieve up to the minute information. It's not like yes, the retraining the training data up to a certain date, but they have also fresh data model where they can retrieve new data, especially around news and stuff like this. So every time they retrieve content from publishers, they should pay them, even if it's cached, right? And I think this is gonna create a whole new ecosystem, especially on all the LLMs, that hopefully will help publishers. Because what happens is, if LLMs don't pay publishers, a lot of publishers will get out of business. And if they get out of business, it's like catch 22. You don't have good content to train the model on, and then more hallucination and more, you're only left with bad content online. So I think there's something needs to be done around how publishers make money or get revenue from these LLMs.
I think that's absolutely right. And at the moment in the UK, the last couple of weeks has been a very big campaign where national newspapers, B2B publishers, magazines, and everybody have been doing covers and advertising, a campaign called Make It Fair, where the AI in fair is highlighted. And I'm a member of the digital group at the PPA, which is a trade association for publishers in the UK. And we've been lobbying Parliament because there's a digital bill going through. And it's very, very important that publishers are fairly compensated, because as you quite rightly say, John, this expert content is being used to train an engine that then is keeping the traffic on its own site. With Google, it's more transparent. It's more worrying with some of these other models, particularly I mentioned Perplexity, where they seem to be increasing the number of robots they're sending to us. So on the one hand, they're taking our content. On the other hand, they're increasing our costs at serving, because we've got all these robots coming in. We've then got to filter them out from genuine reports for advertisers and users and those kind of things. And in the UK, at least, I think it might be something that's happening in the US too. There is a company called Prorata.ai who have been talking to publishers in the UK to try and build a kind of a system where they create a new AI tool where publishers are rewarded based on the percentage of the answer that has been used to calculate the result for the end user. And that seems to be a kind of model that could work. What we're all worried about is whether publishers could build it themselves. Why do we need another third party who's going to take a share? And the answer probably is Spotify probably is the way to illustrate how that worked for the music industry. And possibly our future is also in a mashup between content and live events, rather like bands have gone back on tour because they're not getting the royalties from selling streams on Netflix and things like that. So I think it's a very interesting point you make, and something that is very, very front of mind, certainly for publishers in the UK.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So the first thing, just because I didn't get a chance to mention it before, what you mentioned about the robots.txt
Yeah.
issue that you're having, John, I remember a quote that somebody in the industry gave to me once. He was talking about an NDA that he had to sign. And he said, an NDA, it's a bit like a robots.txt. You can choose to accept it or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
John S., you said something about getting subscribers and charging people for content. So for the longest time, I was reading the New York Times online, and then eventually they're going to start charging me for it, and they asked for a subscription. And I thought about that for a second, and I thought, if I don't subscribe, am I going to be missing the New York Times content here? But then suddenly realized, if I go over to Maddie's place, if I'm not subscribing to the New York Times, if I go to Maddie's place, sorry, I guarantee at CBS, there'll be something that's saying, the New York Times today published blah, blah, blah. And I get their news from somewhere else anyway. Barry, I just want to come to you to talk about going back to the financial aspect, to the monetary aspect of traffic. So kind of like you, when I was working on search engine watch and ClickZ, one of the things people used to ask me, you just giving away content, you give a free subscription to all of these experts writing this content, and you're not getting paid for it. And I said, no, you don't understand. This is part of a path. I want people to come into Search Engine Watch to find out how great this content is. And then I'm going to take them on a journey that has them on a seat in a conference in New York that they just spent $1,500 on. So when you're looking at, what it is that Search Engine Land as a publication is trying to do with traffic that they get from search, how do you measure that? And what is it? What is the end goal?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm lucky that I don't have to worry about that. That's not my job. My job is to write the content and to keep track of what's going on. I do think that was
You
ultimately
might
the
need to
goal
know
for.
what it is that your company's doing to make money, though.
Honestly, I don't care. I don't need that. It's a hobby. People don't get it, and I don't have to make a dime. I could just write this stuff because I love it. I make money through my software company. So, I mean, obviously, it is their problem. They have to make sure to pay the payroll, and yeah, it's all about not just ads. Obviously, ads are important, but also about those seats in in-person conferences, which we're going back in person at XMX Advanced in Boston, which is going great. So hopefully, anybody in the area, definitely see you guys there. But also, we had the online conferences, and often those online conferences were free, but we had sponsorships. So it's all about generating revenue towards the conference, as well as obviously getting ads on the page. But again, I mean, I'm the type of guy like, I don't care. Take my content, AI, consume it. As long as you're producing content on the topic that I'm writing about that is not make believe and not fake and not not trustworthy, and you could get that content from me, I'm okay with it because my ultimate goal is to make sure the best content is out there. Yeah, I understand why publishers need to get that traffic, but I feel like that's I think it's more of a brand play now. So yeah, so they Search Engine Land, the AI response says Search Engine Land says this and that. Great. And also Search Engine Land has a conference called XMX, so definitely go ahead and check it out. Hopefully that's the goal for them. But we're in these early days, like you said, and yeah, it's all about, at least in the early days, about generating that traffic that drives people into seats. And sometimes we drove a lot of weird traffic, like Google Doodles. Like you clicked on a doodle in Google. Back in the old days, none of the big publishers found this, but early on, I would get so much, like the Google GA analytics real time data would go off the charts, and I'm like, oh, I'll cover Google Doodles because it's on topic, and I love watching those charts explode. And Danny Sullivan's, after I did it on Search and Roundtable, he's like, do that for Search Engine Land too. So I did it on Search Engine Land, and then I see the CBS start doing it now, and then all the other sites start doing it. So, and now Google's smart enough where they actually send the Google Doodle traffic to their own Doodle page, which is again, how things go in the publishing world. Again, ultimately, yeah, you have to find the revenue model that works because most people have payroll for their publishing sites. Luckily, I don't have to worry about that. But yeah, those seats, in-person conferences, learning and teaching and experimenting and having those networking events is ultimately the goal, where you bring the SEO community together through the site of Search Engine Land, the brand of Search Engine Land.
Interestingly, you've just answered the question I asked before. Helpful content is actually the Google Doodle.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting thing as well. We started at the top. We haven't even got a few minutes left, but just real quick, I've got another show coming around to cover this topic. But we started talking about SEO. It's just always been known as the traffic driver. That's all people wanted. But what I hear this year, now all of a sudden again with AI and all of these things, is that everybody has to be a brand. How important to a brand, or in helping to build a brand, is SEO? John S.
Sure, absolutely. I think yes, this year more than any other year, brand takes the front seat, right? Google is more biased towards bigger brands than smaller brands, and that's why a lot of smaller brands got hurt badly over the last few algorithm updates. So bigger brands, it's built, part of the bias of Google algorithm is to, hey, we trust these brands. These brands are well known by the users. We're gonna highlight more of them, right? So it's more brands. I think when you build a brand where users are actually associating your brand with specific queries, you go to a whole different level, right? There is a huge difference when people search for ESPN or ESPN NFL. They want NFL news from ESPN. They want local news from specific CBS news local sites, and so on, right? So brand is huge. One of the things we do at News Dash, which is a real-time news tool that helps publishers, is we tell them what's their authority of the brand on specific news topics. So hey, we write about, I don't know, NFL, who is the most authoritative and why, and so on. So I think brand is number one. And I think it's gonna continue to do that. I think the other thing also, SEO is not just about brand. I think SEO need to be a business function. I think you said it, Mike, correctly. SEO is, it's not about just driving traffic. What's the ultimate goal here, right? It's revenue, right? So we need to understand the business goals. Are we in it to get more subscriptions? If subscriptions is our goal, it's not about chasing trends, right? What type of content that works for us that can convert to subscriptions that can help our business and so on. So there is so different factors. So I think brands and being a business function, I think, are the best two things or the most important two things for SEOs this year.
It's funny you say that, because I'm like, I know money's not the most important thing. It's a business, but as a content producer, the most important thing for me is the truth on the topic coming out to as many people as possible, and as quickly as possible, and as accurately as possible. Business side, let the business people figure it out. But on the content side, I think that's ultimately with the helpful content update and Google's core updates is they want the most useful, relevant content for the user. And sometimes the business can get in the way of that.
Yeah, and I said that's why I specifically said SEOs, right? So as a content producer, as an editor, as a writer, I don't think you should be worried about how the business makes the money, or right. Sure, definitely you should care about the business, but you are in it for the content itself. But I think as SEOs, they need to see themselves more as business function more than just a traffic driver. That's what I meant.
Real quick, John B. You mentioned brands that that your company owns. The Grocer is a big brand in the UK. Does that help with building the trust with Google? Do you get more branded traffic?
I think, I mean, having big, long-established brands like the Grocer that are also, more importantly, sector experts, so they're niche in some regards, you could say, compared to a CBS or a national newspaper that covers a lot of different subjects. That certainly helps. And I think brands are important, but I think it's also about sectorial category expertise. That's just as relevant. And I think that is the way in which some of our bigger brands help our smaller brands, because if we can refer traffic to say one of our restaurant titles or a pub title because it's more expert than the Grocer on that subject, those big brands definitely help the smaller brands to get more authority, for sure.
Real quick, Maddie, 30 seconds. CBS, it's a monster brand in the US and around the world. Does that help greatly?
I would say so. I think, being a recognizable, sought after brand will help and will continue to help even more as Google results become more personalized. I know every SEO experiences when they search for a query to see where they're showing up in their Chrome logged in experience, they're going to see their own site higher up than if they were to search in incognito, because of how often they click on their own site and interact with their own site, especially also in the age of Discover being such a massive referral source. The more people are searching for your brand in Google, the more they're going to see you in Discover. And ultimately, it's a long, hard to measure effort, but building up that brand is going to be crucial for SEOs even more moving forward.
Excellent. Well, it's the usual story. I could sit here and talk all day, but I hope you'll come back and do it again. I really appreciate it. And there is so much great information. I mean, having experts like you, like I said before, I don't take it for granted. There are so many people in the industry who are telling me now how much they really appreciate that they're getting such great in-depth and practical knowledge from you guys. So thank you so much to all four of you. And like I say, I hope you'll come back again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
And that is it for this one. Thank you again to my guests. There will be another Inside Marketing with You Know Who next week. I hope you'll join me for that one. Until then, see you next time.